Hi, you're watching Let's Talk Family Civility, and I have
Mm,
an amazing special guest. I know every week is a special guest, but this is an amazing special guest. Is Dr. Robert Ornelas. Dr. Ornelas is the frontman for the SOG crew or SOG crew.
mhm.
Made history, and they made history in 2012 when he was selected by the AIPCA delegates in 2012 for his support of Israel and current activism throughout the country. Men like this are needed right now. First time in the history of the United States that a hip hop artist and Latino with Mexican descent ran for the US office of the US Vice President. It was the second time in history that a person of Native American ancestry had vied for a vice presidential office. He was the second after Herbert Hoover's vice president, Charles Curtis, to have Native American ancestry. Dr. Robert Ornelas is the great 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 grandson of Chief Cristobal Osuna from a tribe in the San Diego Mountains circa the Treaty of Guadalupe and Hidalgo in 1848. Dr. Ornelas is currently the California State Liaison for the American Independent Party and was recently honored with the Global Indigenous Leadership Icon Award through I Change Nations, led by former President of the Republic of Malawi and the Honorable Her Excellency Joyce Banda. Today, Bishop Ornelas lives in Anaheim, California, with his wife Melissa, his sons Jacob and Joshua, and they are all involved in the Orange County community. Robert mentors kids in most high schools in the United States through the Ron Cerna anti-bullying program, which is again, it starts from there. The
Yes.
Bureau of Indian Education, LA School Art Program PACE, using hip hop to encourage students to continue their education. He's working with kids in the Los Angeles youth jails thanks to probation department and is preparing to release the group's fifth album soon thanks to Thump Records and Universal Music Group.
Yes.
Hi, Dr. Ornelas. How,
Hello.
how are you? I'm going to call you Dr. Robert if you don't
It's
mind.
okay. How are you,
And
doctor?
I'm great. And those watching, please share, please comment. We
Yes.
really want your interaction in this discussion because it is, through these times, yes, we are talking about Black Lives Matter, and it's very important because we understand that this at this time enough is enough.
Yeah.
However, Indigenous people are probably the only other cultural group that can actually relate to what is going on with generational trauma and
Generational
why
trauma.
it has taken so long for enough to be enough. I mean, we are hearing 400 years. It's been longer for Indigenous people of what has been going on with oppression. And that is one of the things of oppression, is that eventually you feel you just don't have that voice. And that lack of voice is being passed on from generation to generation, hence generational trauma.
Yes.
So going back to it, Dr. Ornelas, how do Indigenous people, let's set the groundwork.
Yes.
How do your people, the Indigenous people of not just America, but Canada, how do they consider family? What is their definition of family and how does their family dynamics work?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the Honorable Dr. Clyde Rivers
Mm,
for introducing me to you. And please keep the Honorable Sir Rivers in prayer because recently he lost his mentor, the
mhm,
president of Burundi, Africa. And so I know my wife, we went for a long walk yesterday in Long Beach, California. And she goes, we got to keep Clyde and Dr. Rivers in prayer and
yes.
don't get into his business. Just, we need to just lift him up. So if anybody is out there listening, please keep Dr. Rivers in prayer. But on the subject of civility, I would, I would like to say that in studying civility, I've learned that the Romans had their origins of civility, of entitlements, of moral obligations. So when we read about civility or where the origin or where it started from, in history traces it back to the Romans. But
Mhm,
in my reality, the way I was raised up and the way my grandfather and his grandfather and families before us, and the way that I was raised up, uh, civility was a major principle, because our grandfathers and our great grandfathers and all those that came before us, they treated their neighbors as they wanted to be treated, and that's
Mhm.
how they flowed, that's how they lived, that's how they it was an acknowledgement. And so I was taught at a very, since the womb, really, as I started to walk, I was with family. They were My family were chief negotiators of ancestral lands, and they would fight for the lands. But the reason that I'm bringing that up is because not only did they with civility for the indigenous community about um, respecting the family and honoring the neighbors, but it was also of acknowledgement and involvement and intercessions and mediations, keeping the peace and negotiations. And so when it comes to civility, I believe it's a community that does, from the origins, was to honor, from the origins, from the beginnings, from thousands and thousands of years ago, of our Native Americans, like you said, Canada, United States, and also Mexico, North America. I see the same thing in South America. We have the Native Americans of American Samoa. There's different tribes in Puerto Rico, Guam. I mean, these are indigenous communities of Alaska, the Athabascans. And so my family experience,
Mhm.
from reading history, and from being around every single Native, First Nations, indigenous community in North America and the South Pacific, it's civility is of honoring neighbors, and it's acknowledging one another, and that's what it is. And so being taught that, like book knowledge, or being taught by your elders, and then your elders being the patriarch, and then the patriarch die, and then you have the matriarch, and then the matriarch die, and so the preachers of civility get kind of shuffled and lost along the way. But I'll get into right before the trauma. I want to say that being a member of the indigenous community has been a tremendous honor, because there's an adoption for those, there's a welcoming, and I've been adopted. Not only do I have family, but I have my adopted family, the Crows and the Apaches and the Navajos and the Pimas and the Lakotas, and learning the principles of civility and acknowledging and being adopted, and then learning the history of, let's say, the Lakotas, who were originally by Denver, but then settled in the Black Hills, that also have family in Canada. From
Mhm.
listening to their history, from sitting down with mentors that were also United States veterans, and they share their stories, that their ancient men would leave that area and visit every single village and community in North America, acknowledging them, praying for the land, praying for the water, praying for the livestock, praying for the families, praying for the pregnant, praying for the children, and looking and talking about the children as holy. So having that in my life, being adopted by numerous tribes, working with the Bureau of Indian Education, working with hundreds of schools on the subject of anti-bully and civility, um, for me, it's a dream come true, because here we now, with all that rich history and the principles of civility, let's take example our United States. We have the US come in, and they're negotiating with the people of civility, and they make peace treaties. And so what happens is, there's a neglect on the peace treaties, there's a neglect on these contracts.
Mhm.
And so from the start of this union with other cultures, there was a neglect of the supreme laws of the peace treaties, and it disregarded, it ignored, it paid no attention. It was a careless, it was like a careless, the way they handled the people and the agreement and the contract was careless. And so if the country, if Congress, who already voted for, already allowed this peace treaty, um, if you're not hearing these peace treaties and these treaties, I mean, the indigenous had people that fought and died in war for our freedoms. If you're not going to hear that, then and you're going to be careless about our supreme laws and our supreme who we are and our identity, then understand what you're doing is you're creating a traumatic effect and a shock. So before we could talk about the alcoholism, the domestic violence, the heroin,
Well,
the
that's symptoms of the
methamphetamines,
trauma.
before
That
we
is,
can,
yeah, that's
before
self-medicating the trauma.
the first traumatic
Yeah.
experience is neglecting
Hmm.
the agreement. And
Yeah.
so let that be a civil message for families. We're talking about civility. You're
It's a
getting
betrayal.
you're getting input on the indigenous community, but let it be for all
Yeah.
civil families that want to preach the message of honor and respect again. Is that
Hmm.
as parents, let's say we're talking about civility in the families, as parents, if
Hmm.
we do not honor our agreement, you have a, we make these agreements, and as a family, we should be able to amend them and change them as we go or whatever it might be. But we have these agreements, and then all of a sudden, alcoholism gets involved, and promiscuous living gets involved, and neglect. What that does, creates traumatic experiences. Now, the traumatic experience, you can tell the signs of a traumatic experience. Somebody that has been so through generation of trauma, and you can see it in our modern time because people are obese. People, I've never seen so much cancer in Native American indigenous communities like I'm seeing today.
Hmm.
Mental health issues, suicidal like never before. The alcoholism, people are in federal prisons locked up because they've lost their minds, they lost their all hope. In actuality, trauma causes people to believe that people are following them and chasing them. So
Yeah.
when people are having these hallucinations talking about they're being chased, well, you know, a lot of people want to pray for them. Let's pray for them so that that suicidal spirit. No, they've been traumatized. They've gone through traumatic experiences, and the origins were that they were created to be humble. The indigenous people were a loving, cared for the family. They looked at their children as holy. They gave
Everybody was
God.
equal.
What's that?
Everybody, everybody was equal.
Everybody was in love, everybody was happy, there was no stealing, there was no evil, there was no, I mean, great minds of agriculture, and all the highways that we have in North America were all little roads that were paved and carved by just thousands of years of traveling, and the fishing, and it
Well,
just.
one thing, I don't know if it's similar to Canada. America is similar to Canada, but the indigenous people of Canada, they respected and loved the land so much that they didn't do crop rotation as we know it as. I mean, from an island, I know crop rotation because we have limited space. But seasons were for everywhere. People would move from one
Well, you
place
gotta
to the
we're
other
not we're not talking
because of
sovereign.
seasonal hunting and seasonal crop
Yeah.
rotation, and they allowed the earth to revive itself and not over farm anything or
Well,
overfish anything.
you
Greed was not part of it, and this is why I wanted to have this show, because unfortunately, these are the lessons that are not being taught in school,
yes.
that this is a culture that was being eliminated. So what happened for example, in the Caribbean, is they made the indigenous people of those islands extinct. They killed them off. Whereas in Canada, they tried to kill them off by culture, putting them in the residential schools, and making them cut their hair, not allowed to even practice the language they speak, completely taking away from the culture that, I'll be honest, was better. Instead of saying, hold on, this culture is more peaceful, this culture is more civil, this culture has respect for women, has respect for children, let's adopt their culture.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a lot of leaders that are misusing their power and are controlling people, and we can sit here and point it out, oh, this gentleman, this lady is abusing her power. But then you got to think about the trauma. There's so much trauma. If you look at California alone, I'm from California, and you talk about the California natives. By law, the California natives were not allowed to marry white women. I mean, there's so much they were taking away from their, from their communities and their homes, and they were put in communities of non-indigenous native people and raised in that culture. And so, yeah, you're right. They were uh, told not to speak their dialect. They were told not to pray the way that they were used to praying, or not to honor, the wildlife, or whatever it might be. So it
Here's
is.
my question: how did you, as a people, survive this and not have your culture completely extinct? I mean, because I think that's where, unfortunately, the Black people of America and even the Caribbean and everything, they've lost their culture.
Yeah.
You know, in Jamaica, there are certain entities. I was very privileged and honored to learn Pocomania and Kumino and um, the native dances of West Africa, because I studied African dance and Caribbean dance, and I remember um, uh, some people came over from West Africa, a country in West Africa, and said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing it exactly how we do it." Like it was
Yeah.
exact. So it was passed on accurately, generation to generation. So we had that in Jamaica, but when you look at African Americans and African Canadians, where is that connection,
Yeah.
that actual culture? How did the indigenous people be able to hold on to what culture you have?
The way I was told was we were all one big old huge family. And now, thousands of years later, you might hear a trace of that similarities through the songs or the dialect, or there's a lot of similarities. And so, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a big advocate for those that are imparting the language, they're imparting the even crocheting, the arts. They're I know that I sat in with the Navajo Nation with agricultural as a pick the brain of Israel with agricultural ideas.
Mhm,
So I'm very blessed to be involved in the Native American community, and I support those that are involved in the Native American, First Nations, the Indigenous community, and I'm talking about whether they're in the front or they're in their back with their intercessions.
mhm,
I support anybody involved that supports the higher education and the welcoming of students in their communities. And right now we're working with the group locally here, and with the universities to their freshman students when they come in. Now they're having us do programs of civility just to welcome them and to say,
mhm.
welcome to this university. I'm not even from that university, and they're hiring us to welcome them to their state university to say,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. This is the principles of civility. This is the way that it was taught from our great, 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 great grandparents. And this is unfortunately, it's been like a barren wasteland because of the drugs and the alcoholisms and the
Mhm,
divorces and the like I said, the neglect of peace treaties and the supreme laws and agreements.
mhm,
And so today we have people with cancers, and they lost hope and suicidal thinking. Just people that are just it's called intergenerational impacts, and that
mhm,
involves several generations. So when we speak on this subject of indigenous, we have to keep in mind that we're not just speaking for the kids, we're
Yes.
speaking for the elders, we're
Yes.
speaking for our peers. I'm speaking for the married ones, indigenous, the single indigenous. I'm speaking for my sisters and my brothers and my cousins. And so because this involves everybody, and it's gonna be a cycle that's gonna keep going and
Mhm.
keep going and keep going until we come together and say, wait a minute, we were supposed to preach a message of civility. We
Mhm.
were supposed to honor one another. A lot of people have this attitude like, no, this is how we are as Native Americans. And I think that's good, but at the same time, I think we can make it better by
Mhm.
being proud of who we are, and at the same time, publicly just saying, you know what, I don't know it all. And the indigenous community is so big, that's the beauty of the indigenous collectively community,
Mhm.
because we have this collective body that's beautiful and glorious and holy, and God created, the great creator created it, and we have these beautiful colors and songs and people and the skin and the hair and this warriors
Mhm.
bravery. But at the same time, there there's so much sovereign individual beautiful groups with different dialects and histories and prayers and songs, and that it's just like a never ending appreciation of our people.
Amazing. And again, maybe looking, I know hindsight is 2020, but adopting what was good out of your culture
Civility.
should have been done. Yes, having the civility to treat others as you would like to be treated.
Dr. Harper.
Sure, your culture would not have wanted to be inhabited, but the thing is, we're all growing, we're all
Yes.
evolving.
Yes.
God has put each and every one of us on this earth to learn from each other.
Totally.
Today,
Totally.
every Monday I take away something from my show. Every Thursday I take away something from my parenting show,
Mm.
because that's what I'm here to learn, not just to teach.
All these messages that I learned, um I'm teaching to a lot of Native Americans that maybe their grandfathers are gone, or the older generation is leaving our world. And
Mhm.
um but all the principles that I was taught from a young age, and shown, it was like you couldn't read this stuff. It was
Right.
shown. I've also seen and lived with different indigenous communities in the South Pacific, let's say the Tongans, or different island groups. And I with my principles that I cherish, maybe I didn't understand them, but I held on to them.
Mhm.
I watched how the grandpas treated their grandchildren, and they would say, you know what, if there was only one bed, I would have my grandchildren sleep on that bed, and I would sleep on the floor,
Mhm.
because the way that they saw their children was holiness,
Yeah,
was a blessing.
they are. Our children are blessings. And so now with this, I mean, it just breaks my heart,
Yes.
because no wonder, if you're coming from such a civil society, a loving society, and
Yes.
then you're treated so
Yes.
atrociously, then there is going to be generational trauma, because what's going to happen, as you said, perfectly right, you neglecting an agreement is a betrayal of, I mean, that's what, when you get hurt in your marriage, you agreed when you were getting married to love, protect each other,
Yes.
honor and then that same person has broken that agreement
Yes.
by hurting you
It's
or
traumatic.
betraying you. And it's traumatic. And then
Mhm.
what do, you close up,
Yes.
or you teach your generation not to trust,
Yes.
seek revenge. You have that anger that's not treated.
Yes.
And you're right. With the ACEs model, several doctors, there's an amazing TED talk on it, how they're now determining, based off of your childhood trauma, the illnesses you have.
Yes.
And if you can treat your childhood trauma, then you're able to help with
Hey.
your with your health, which you're perfectly right about. Now we're facing a lot of trauma and
Yes.
generational trauma, 400 years of trauma.
And it's going to grow because, like I said, you have from the origin of
Mhm.
s- colonization or
Yes.
civilization, right? From the origin, you have this breakup, this covenant breaking attitude, spirit, and then so you have, like you said, hundreds of years of this neglect, and people are upset now to our modern time of poverty. You have soldiers that are coming back with depression, the PTSDs, that they're still trying to figure out how to help these guys, and
Well, it's recognizing the triggers. I mean, I was very fortunate to have, and this is definitely a subject that's very, pertinent to me, because at first I had PTSD and didn't know it. And I was like, why am I not doing this? Why am I not functioning? It was very low level. I have not,
yeah,
experienced, but I had it. And so I started knowing me, delve into everything I can learn from it. How can I help myself? How can I help my children through it? And the biggest thing was learning that, recognizing triggers. And sometimes you never know a trigger until, to me, it's a clinking of ice in a glass
mm,
will bother me. A certain song will bother me. A tone in your voice will bother me. But there's bothering and then there's triggering. And we have to respect that word triggering when it comes to trauma.
yeah,
And we have to respect it when it's coming from a child just as much as it's coming from a parent.
yeah,
And what I've had to do in my household is have a safe place that my children say, Mom, that triggered me. When you shouted me, that triggered me. And I calm down. And it's almost like a safe word. Like, okay, I triggered, calm down. And that's how I've had to deal with it. But then how do you deal with it? That's just me and my kids.
yeah. I'm
And
an advocate for the whole North America, and you know, okay, so we have that as the root of the disagreement or the abandonment of the supreme law. But then you have in our modern time the physical abuse, right? So now we're dealing with, and now today women are beating their guys up, really physically abusing their guys as well. So it goes both ways. The parent on the
but this is
child,
the thing. This is so now let's use that as a great example of generational trauma.
yeah,
Because what has happened is that, and we use single moms to overpower their sons, and they have that trauma with their fathers,
yeah,
and therefore you use physical strength to overpower. I mean, I have a teenage boy. It takes a lot to figure out how to discipline him as a single mom without using physical power and to overpower him, which can be the easier way. But going back to the point is, you have that generational trauma of so many girls who watch their mothers being beaten
yes,
and then swearing it ain't going to happen to me.
yes.
So what did they do? They beat before they get beaten.
Well,
But the core problem is the trauma they faced as a child and not dealing with that.
let me okay, working with native communities, and I have we have a anti-bully program, Ron Cerna program we partnered up with, that's national. But the trauma, what it does is it causes anxieties,
Mm-hmm.
and from the anxieties, it creates adrenaline.
Mm,
And so
right,
what we're
right.
finding is it's causing this strong emotion, this
Mm-hmm.
high level of anger. Some people are even excited, and so it's like a drug. And the trauma has even caused this adrenaline, and this. Some people, it's their sweet spot to be in fear or to be in anger. Some people,
Wow.
they just are empowered because of years and
Mm,
generations of anger, and
good point.
anger through the anxieties caused through the trauma.
So you're saying, so this is a very good point. You're saying that through trauma, it ignites the fight or
Yeah,
flight
it's like a
adrenaline.
drug.
and you actually become not addicted to it, but you feel that power, getting the power that you've lost for so many years due to oppression. You're actually, that's when you get it back, and therefore you always claim for that power back, that internal power. And so
Adrenaline.
I don't like the word addicted, but
Yeah.
you
Yes.
don't, you know what it is, you start to now believe it's not a bad thing.
It's normal. They think it's
It's
normal.
it's a
And
good thing.
so back to the origins of civility in Indigenous, we were created to be happy,
Yeah.
to be peacekeepers, to be um,
Civil.
gentle, humble, mediators, and to be warriors, to fight for your civility.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, yeah, we have a hard task, and you could be the activist in our modern day and get mad and flip the cops off and want to turn
Mm.
the car over, or we could be the advocates that say, okay, when you're done, I'm going to go inside and talk, and we're going to change the laws here. So that's, I feel in my heart that I was created to be an advocate that was going to, first of all, study and educate myself, and learn, and fight in a way where we're going to be around tomorrow to fight, and next year to fight, so,
Mhm.
and where we're teaching at the same time as we're fighting, we're teaching civility, and that it's okay to have an opinion, and it's okay, you don't like me, it's okay, but I'm very proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my children, and I'm proud of where I come from. And you might look at me as a drunk Indian or a drunk this and that, but you know what, I'm a blessed and holy man. I was
Mhm.
created for this time, for this season, to fight and to be civil and preach the messages of civilities as our fathers before us, and how they kept the glue. Our fathers were the glue. Our grandparents, great grand, they were the glue. And
Yeah.
how do we bring that glue back? And I truly believe that it's going to be God, but messages of civility, and the Bible actually um, is the fundamental concept and principle and philosophy for all the advocates in civility. Matthew 7:12. Therefore, all things whatsoever you would want that men should do to you, do you even to them. And that's the law. And when it says and the prophets, it means that's your inspiration. That's,
Mhm.
we should want to help somebody out and put others above ourselves, and take our shirt off, not the women, but us men, take the shirt off our
Well, you
back.
can have an undershirt.
Yeah, you have an undershirt. Yeah, yeah, you have an extra shirt, you know
Exactly. Or
and
go home and get one
but
and come
that's my philosophy. That's what I've learned. It's been confirmed. Like I said, I don't know it all, but I do love to study in everybody's museums. I go to all the native, indigenous museums wherever I can go. I learn. I love to be mentored. I love to learn different foods and languages and songs, and so I'm serious about the civility of bringing it back, and
back.
being patient and being gentle, and
Mhm.
understanding that it's going to take a lot of work for this community. And I know, like I said, there's no, when it comes to Indigenous, Dr. Harper, when it comes to Indigenous, there really is no line between California or US and Canada. It's all a family. And the same thing with the people on the other side and the Mexican border.
Mhm.
It's all when it comes to Indigenous, it's all the same blood, even across to the Pacific Ocean, even the Athabascans of Alaska on your other side of your borders, and on your islands out there that you guys have in Canada. It's all, if our origin was civility, then the people that are in your community that are battling obesities and cancers and diabetes and abuses and
Sure.
neglects, and just a different image, misinterpretation.
Mm.
Civility, take them back to civility and say, did you know that your forefathers thousands of years ago, they put their kids above themselves, and they put their neighbors above themselves? Did you know that? No, you don't know what I've been through. I know. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to know, and did you know that a lot of the what you're experiencing is because people didn't uh, respect the power and authority and agreement? And did you know that? I didn't know that. I want to commit suicide. No, no, no. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Did you know that your mom, she was only 13 when she had you, and she didn't have anybody. She was raised in a different home that wasn't indigenous.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Did you know that she went away? She missed her grandparents. She wasn't at the grandparents' funeral because she was in a boarding school that she had to live at. And while she was there, she was molested. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Did
It's
you? No, no, no. Let me finish with this example. Talking to these kids, did you know that your auntie or your sister, while she was over there, you're fighting with her, but did you know that while she was at that school, her teacher committed suicide?
and did they know?
They all know. They all know, man. So it's a big issue. We need to preach civility. I'm learning by talking to you right now. I could feel my heart racing right now, Dr. Harper. And I feel like this show has opened my eyes. I want to cry, and it makes me proud of who I am that I decided, Dr. Rivers came into my life and he gave me the message of civility,
Mm.
and I didn't even it's like he defined it who I was, and he gave me the tools and said, "Hey man, this is who you are. This is your message of your forefathers." You know? And that's beautiful. That helped my life. That saved me. It allowed me to be a person of mannerisms and etiquette and protocol and respect and honor and blessings. So to
It's
all the advocates of civility, thank you. I mean that from my heart.
and this is what we need to do is spread the word even more. And you've taught me, I mean, studying it here and the fact that the Indigenous people of Canada have gone through the exact same things, and what traumatized me just hearing it was that the last residential school closed in 1996. In 1996, I was in university in Montreal. I was living in Canada and I had no clue that these schools were happening. And we were allowed, and this is where we don't speak up. You know, it's not just the people that are doing wrong that should be accused. It's those who are staying silent and knowing it's happening is just as bad. And not saying it's wrong for fear of your problem, because the problem is, see, yes, we had it before the show, if you see something, say something. And I go back to a little harsher way, and it's a hashtag that I'm starting to use is say it's wrong and say it loud. I was told today, and this is going a little off topic. Somebody said to me today that because I've been applying for jobs in Canada for over a year now, and somebody said to me today, and somebody close to me, and they said to me, "Well, you need to go in because you have a very Jamaican resume and you sound Jamaican. In other words, I sound black and I have a very black resume." And I said to them, "No, I don't want to work anywhere if they think they're not hiring me because I'm black, and then I walk in and they find out I'm white and then they hire me." I said, that is me saying, "Oh, okay, it's okay." It's not. If you do not hire me, I'd rather you be shocked and see that I'm white
Yeah.
at the end of the day, but you've hired me because of my credentials, not because of the color of my skin.
That's equality. That's what you're
And
after.
but it's me saying it's wrong what you are doing. If I
Yeah.
go in and use the fact, oh, they don't know that I'm white, let me go in, that is me endorsing what is going on, and that is wrong, and I'm saying it's wrong, and that's me not acting on privilege that I would have.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say, is that we all, as you have said it today, we have to go into the communities and learn who is our neighbor, learn how they think, learn their cultures, adopt the good,
Yeah.
adopt the good. And this is, I'm very drawn to the indigenous culture because it's so peaceful, it's so civil, it does not have gender issues,
Yes.
it doesn't, it respects sexuality, it is actually the universal design for family, which is what my whole initiative is about.
Family.
It is about being a family designed for all accepted, despite your sexuality, your gender, your age. That's what the universal design is. That my child, no matter who they are, I will love and support them. Who my brother is, my sister is, I will love and support them, because no matter who they are and what they're like, whether they are my biological or not biological either.
Yeah.
Because as you said today, which is what I was wanting, I was happy that you came on the show to say, is that your communities, your tribes were a family. It wasn't each home was a family, your tribe was a family. And everyone had their role to play based off of their talents. Not even who they were born to. It's based off of their talents. If they were good at hunting, that's where they went. And we don't even do that. You have to be a lawyer. Even though you might be a terrible lawyer, that's who you're going to be. We don't even look at our children and see their talents. And I am so honored that you came on to tell us. And going back to the trauma, again, we have to now apologize, reconcile. And I apologize. My ancestors are from North Africa and somewhere in Europe, not Brit. I think in Britain, some in Britain, some in Europe. I'm all over the place, being Jamaican, but I'm born Jamaican. But I will apologize for ancestors. I will apologize, and not, and I will stand up against it. And how can we stand up more against what is going on? And we have to.
One of the things we have in common that I see on is that
Yeah.
Canada and the US together, we've campaigned the message of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I really, studying it and checking it out and supporting it, I decided to get more involved in that. And so now I'm a key speaker whenever I'm invited to different nations. The last community I spoke at was at the Ute Nation in Fort Duchesne, Utah, on the subject of missing and murdered. And it really opened my eyes that Canada and the US have a lot in common on that subject. Because here in the US, Native Americans, if and I'm not calling them, but the way that the laws are set up, it's like second class citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times the police, there's no civility there. There's no respect and honor. They don't write the data. They don't write the report correctly. They don't. And so what happens is, oh, well, they're just a native Indian or urban, whether they're from the reservation, whether they're from the clan, or whether they're urbanized
Mm-hmm.
in the city, all just indigenous. Oh, well, and they do profile, they profile them, and they don't get the same jobs, they don't get the same education, they don't, a lot of different things that are taking place. And so because of that, the traumatic experiences of physical abuse and neglect, and then it's substance abuse within the household, and then because it's so bad that then the mental illness takes place, and they hallucinate, and they it's like they start going crazy. And then and consider these kids are traumatized, and they're trying to hold it together, and then the parents divorce, or uncle is in prison.
Yep. Or
And
depression.
so,
A parent suffering from depression is on one of the ticks of
yeah,
childhood trauma.
so from that is the
Yeah,
kid at
neglect.
a young age, risky behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, you could trace it. The drinking, the smoking, the drug use. Now you have the opiate epidemic.
But you see, this is a problem. We're not dealing with the core issues. We have the Alcoholic Anonymous. We have,
Overeating.
we have overeating. We have, but what we're dealing, it's almost like a cold medicine, over the counter cold medicine. Okay, here you have, what does a cold medicine do? It does not get rid of your virus. It does not get rid of the bacteria in you. What it does is it subsides the symptoms to make you feel better, but the sickness is still inside you.
Civility
And that
there.
is what we're doing. We're not, this is where trauma informed practice now comes into play, where you say, okay, what triggers you? And I'm going to give you an example. This whole pandemic thing happening, we are fine, we do what we can, we suffer, but you notice, like for instance in my house, we started getting sick, or my son was oversleeping, or this is happening, and I'm like, he's being triggered. What's going on with him? Oh, I'm
Hey,
fine, I'm
hey,
fine.
that happened to me, Dr. Harper. All of a sudden, my allergies, and I'm looking at the news like, what?
Because of the fact, I hate to say it, is that I started getting sick too, because I internalize my triggers, right? And when you internalize your triggers, then you start getting physically sick. Now, what is happening with these children when you study them on probation and they're having trouble with the law? We're not dealing with the core issues, even when they're on probation. Oh, do community service. You're dealing with the symptoms. You're not dealing with the core issue,
Yeah.
right? Worse yet, we have a situation where you're dealing with the youth, but you're not dealing with the family unit. And so you can do whatever you want with the day with the youth, but
Yeah.
they still go home to the same problems and the same triggers every night.
Dr. Harper, I'm trying to reach everybody, and I hope you get to come out here, because when I go, let's say we do a school program on a
Mhm.
Native American community, we go out there, we do the anti-bully, and I hold everybody accountable. I know our program, the Ron Cerna program, we hold the teachers accountable, the principal, vice principals, the counselors, the coaches, even the lunch people, everybody, to show the kids
Yeah,
we're here to back them up. We're here. We don't like bullies. We don't like harassment. We want them to be free. And so we come in as the bully police. And I tell the kids that, hey, we're the bully police. And we do the hip hop and the songs and things like that. But while we're there, the kids are so engaged that the teachers and the staff, we've never seen anything like that, they say. And next thing you know, the kids, when they're being picked up, the parents were like, my son, my daughter, they enjoyed your program. And now you're communicating with the parents, and you're relaying what
exactly.
we want to see. What I want to see is parent involvement with the kids and the teachers. That's it. I want you guys to be on the same
This is
page.
what happens now. So right now, you will go into the school, which is, you integrate with the parents, and you back
Yes.
up the parents. But in normal programs, you go into the school and you deal with the child, and you're saying, okay, this is what needs to happen, and this is why you're acting this way. Then they
Yeah.
go home and they're like, but my parents aren't saying this. My parents aren't doing this. So what you're doing is setting up the parents to fail even more, because you're like saying, okay, I'm going to tell the child this information. It's almost like a math. Remember when you're doing math, we learned math a certain way, and now they're learning it a different way, and you're like, well, that's not how I learned it. Well, you're wrong. The teacher's right. And there's this constant confusion between teachers and parents to say, So the poor child is like, okay, am I to listen to my parent or am I to listen to my teacher? Who's right?
You know what I do though in that situation?
You understand my point? I mean, these poor children. It's like, guys, we have to unite,
You know what I do in that
work
situation is
together.
I before I go into a community, I learn their history, I learn who their ancestors were, I learn whatever I could go. I go to find their peace treaties, I find out who their representations are. I try to learn everything. I try to learn the economy, their water. I try to dive in their rivers. I try to go fish. Whatever it takes for me to understand that community, their museums, their agriculture. I want to walk in their streets. I want to ride their horses. If I get an opportunity to do a ceremonial, a bull or a buffalo, I'll do it. And so the main thing is the intimacy.
Yeah.
You have to have intimacy across the board. Like I said, I believe our origins is civility, has always been civility,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, allowing you to trust through
Mm-hmm.
the civility for an intimate brotherhood, sisterhood, friendship, family, adoption. But it's the intimacy. This is how I'm intimate with my family. This is how my blood relationship is with my family. We are into. This is how I am with God. This is when I sing, I have an intimate relationship. It's it and so you're taking. We might not be able to help everybody, but it's when we have a platform and the opportunity is there, just like right now. You're
Mm-hmm.
giving nuggets, you're sharing your heart, you're sharing your life's experiences, your research, the data, your affiliations, your associations, all the this time of the quarantine, the last few months that people have come up here for representing civility for the family, and you're sharing your heart, and that's how I see it. If it's just this hour, then you know what? We have to do our part for that hour.
I love what Dr. Kama said from Kenya. Hello. I see we're even connecting continents.
Yes.
We have the duty to bring up our children, and parenthood cannot be delegated. He's so right. We cannot delegate. And, whenever we're dealing with a child, we have to bring in the parents. We cannot
Okay.
do the work for them.
I agree with you.
We're
Now,
saying this is what you're saying, but and you said something very important. I wanted to that nugget is that knowing their state of change as well. We can't help everybody. Not everybody is ready to be helped, and we
but
have to respect that just as much.
I agree. We have to be overseers, guardians of our responsibilities that God has blessed us to have holy children through the holy covenant marriage that God has blessed us, the union that we have with God, creator of all. And but you have millions of kids that don't have dad, grandma, grandpa. You have and so you're either going to be a leader through your as a father, you're going to be a leader maybe through your religious belief leader in the community, you're going to be a leader through maybe you're a coach, sports coach,
And that's what family civility is. It doesn't have to
community.
be biological.
Yes, and the thing about it is because I've been blessed to be a hip hop artist, and at the same time a political person, at the same time a son of God.
Hmm.
um I personally, in my country, it's my obligation to father these kids,
Hmm.
to be the uncle. Whether I go to Hawaii, whether I go to Puerto Rico, Guam, New York, whether I cross the border into Toronto, one day I'll be out there.
Yeah.
And my attitude is, this is the medicine. And maybe I only have 2 seconds to talk, 30 seconds to talk, 5 minutes to talk. My character and my attitude and what I want to bring to the table is a father's heart, a mentoring mentality, uh, and whoever is placed in my path, I believe I can reach him. I really do. I really do with my heart.
I have to say, Father's Day is coming up, and the amount of Father's Day cards I send out to those men who have helped me parent my children.
Mm,
You know, my son goes to scouts, and I'm so grateful for those
Yes.
he does. I'm so grateful for my cousin Sean and my uncle Howard and my brother Andrew. He doesn't like to be said anything, so but my brother, I have had male friends
Yeah.
who have guided my children and been there for them. And as a single mother, and this is my personal opinion, it's not gospel. As a single mother, I can't be a dad, but it doesn't mean I cannot find male
Yeah.
caring adults
Yeah.
to help me show my sons how to be a son. I'm going to mention my brother-in-law Tim,
Mm.
who helped my son in his formative years, my eldest son, to show him what a gentleman can be. If I bring up my dad, I'm going to start crying. But he was the gentleman of all. I mean, he taught my sons how to fish. He taught me how to fish, but he was that type of person. He loved everybody. He had a smile that could light up a room, and he always smiled. He always had a compliment for everybody, and that was my dad. And it's passes down, and I am grateful that my children got to know him, and they all, it says a lot when he has 5 grandchildren and they all had a different name for him.
Mhm.
They all had, it was amazing. The boys had one name, and then my brother's children had another name, and my daughter had another name. And because they all had a different connection to
Yes.
him, and he took that time, and he recognized individuality in everybody.
It's that civility. That's
And
the
that
message.
civility, yeah, he said, he sometimes he'd say, I love you all the same, but I like you differently because we connect in different ways. And even at his funeral, his eulogy, his brother spoke about him. He could tell how he loved my daughter because of her artwork and connected with her because of her artwork, how he fished with my eldest son, how the sports with my nephews. He actually could tell how my father connected with all his 5 grandchildren in different ways.
It's beautiful.
And that, is just, this is where Father's Day comes, is that you recognize the caring male adults. And on Mother's Day, I recognize all the caring females
Yeah.
that have helped me mother, because I can't do it alone. And this again, learning from the Indigenous family, you can't do it alone.
Yeah. Beautiful.
For me, it was in African tradition. And for me, in Jamaica, it was a village raised as a child, and I had a blessed village that I miss very much.
Yeah.
And this is, I know we're coming to the end of the show, and we have to have you on again, but we have, let me just recap, or you can recap. We have to work on the trauma, that we're watching the symptoms and trying to deal with the symptoms, but we have to go back to our agreements, our laws. Is that, tell us just in a summation of how can we help generational trauma?
Man, just creating awareness and getting being engaged, that's the main thing, like you're doing. I really do appreciate you creating awareness. You have people, I'm watching your comment section, and I see people from all over the world, and I'm very grateful. That's what you're doing. We're chipping away and we're helping out, letting people from other parts of the world know that, hey, you're not alone.
No.
We're going through it here in North America. We're going through it here in California. We're in Toronto, and
Mhm.
all we want is civility. All we want is these kids to have an opportunity to be children,
Yeah.
and to breathe, and to look into the blue sky, and to hug on their mommy and hug on their daddy, and have an opportunity to play football, and have an opportunity to play in the grass, to be barefooted playing in the grass.
Hmm.
That's it. That as a parent, these are principles. I have the best kids, man. It's amazing.
Yeah.
but it took me discovering who I really am, and a messenger of civility, and I applied that principle to my family. And because of that, I have boys that they honor their mother. They're gentlemen. They're little warriors too. Don't try to punk my kids. Because they believe in civility. So I think for us, we just have to keep doing these types of programs. We have to keep linking people together to network, because maybe there are some people, like you said, in the Bahamas and Jamaica and in Africa that are going through a crisis like suicide. Here in North America, it's incredible.
It's bad.
I can't even read books to help me understand the suicide epidemic caused through depression, anxieties, obesities,
Yeah, we're not dealing with it.
abuse, and we just shared here where the root is, and it was caused by a major traumatic experience that shocked people to believe that they were not respected and honored. So,
Yes, coming from tribes and communities where they were respected and honored.
keep us in prayer. Maybe that's what you can do. You could Anybody out there, if anybody prays out there, pray that I would either be placed in a position that would go into Congress, or in a position that I can support people like that can get into the archives and start fixing our original agreements. That's what we need.
And on a day-to-day basis, until this change comes about, just tell the person beside you how beautiful they are and
Yeah.
how special they are, and that their purpose in life, and learn from them just as much as you want to teach them. I want to thank you, Dr. Ornelas. You have touched my heart, as you always do when you come on the
Yeah.
show.
Good. Thank
It's
you.
like guaranteed we're going to end up crying. But I want to thank you so much, because you are so passionate about this, and you are passionate about love, and you're passionate about God and civility and family, which is the top four ingredients when it comes to family civility. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank
You've
you.
done so much work, and keep it going. And if we can help in any way, if I can help in any way, I'm right there with
Yeah.
you. And thank you for helping me to be on the show and educating me and those watching.
Thank you for all your supporters,
And
all
peace
you
out.
out there. Thank you for honoring Dr. Harper. She's an amazing, amazing friend, an amazing woman, an amazing professional, community advocate. She's a mom. She's a national leader up there in Canada, and just keep praying for her. And that's what would really be dear on my heart, that you would lift her and her family up.
Thank you very much. And just this week, be civil to each other
Yep.
and love. And remember the golden rule. The golden rule is what we need to preach. And Dr. Rivers, thank you so much for uniting us. And as I say, seeing the light in us and igniting it, seeing the fire in us and igniting it at the same time. So thank you. Have a great week, and happy civility. Be civil. Bye-bye.